Well, very good afternoon and welcome along to a damp and dreary Leitrim today. Delighted to say wonderful panel of guests joining us. We have Oisin Quinn, we have Cormac Rabbit, we have Jed Van de Poel, and we have Mary Anderson. Welcome all of you to the show. So what I'm going to do first of all is give each of you a few minutes just to tell people about yourselves, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into discussing the latest stories of the day. So what we'll do, Oisin, is we'll start with yourself there.
My name is Oisin Quinn. I'm 16 and I'm a transition year student in Ballinamore Community School in County Leitrim. I consider myself as quite a sporty person. I play a lot of sport. I play Gaelic football, basketball and rugby. I recently got into the Division 1 Connacht final for my rugby team in Sligo. And I quite enjoy playing basketball here in Ballinamore. I play with the club and the school. So that's really it about me. I don't have really much more, nothing more interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot more to tell us about in a few minutes. Also joining us today, we have Cormac Rabbit.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Cormac Rabbit. I'm an engineer with a particular interest in transportation and transport. I've worked in transport for over 40 years, been involved in actually all of the ring road around Dublin and the other radial routes into it in a fairly significant way. And I have a deep interest in public transport.
Nice, short and sweet and to the point. The way I like it, Cormac.
That's everything.
Also joining us is Jed Van de Poel.
Hi, I'm also an engineer. I work with Cormac. I'm a CEO of an organisation called Metro Dublin, and it's our passion to build a fully functioning, transformational transport system for Dublin. We're looking at a 92-kilometre metro, about half of that underground, and we would like to have that completed by the second half of this decade. And I've been working on that with Cormac now for the past 6 years. But my background, my engineering background was mainly in electronics manufacturing.
Great, thanks very much. And also joining us is Mary Anderson.
Hi, my name is Mary Kay Anderson. I am a retired nurse. I am a practicing hypnotherapist / holistic practitioner. And I work out of Blackrock. And this is probably one of the first cities I have been in that's had a really trains and things like that with public transport, although I didn't find the buses too cool. But hey, that's the way it goes. But anyway, I enjoy life. I enjoy helping people think about things differently and how to move a little bit stronger and better in their life within their own perceptions.
That's great. Thanks, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can see, we're quite a wide, varied panel of guests today, and I'm sure we're going to have some interesting discussions. One of the first things I want to talk about, and the reason I invited Oisin to join us today, during COVID, we heard a lot of talk about leaving cert students. We heard, and all the focus was on leaving cert, was on college, etc. But I thought it'd be interesting to hear from the perspective of someone who was going through the junior cycle, so had their junior cert in the middle of COVID, what life was like for them. So maybe tell us a little bit, Oisin, what was it like, the isolation? Did you get to see your friends regularly, the loss of sports, all of that?
Yeah, well, when I was in lockdown in 2020, the online classes, it wasn't ran as well as it was in 2021. Like some of the teachers, they mightn't attend some of the class and you wouldn't get any work, or then some of the teachers would start piling on all the work and they wouldn't explain it properly. and it was very hard to grasp it, especially maths. You have to be taught it, and it's just very challenging. And then the loss of sport on top of that, like, is kind of downfall on your mental health, like getting physical exercise. Like, I know our rugby club gave us a home workout session to keep us fit and ready for the rugby season when the lockdown was over. But we weren't out of lockdown until there was another lockdown. And recently, only 2 months ago, I played my first rugby game in 2 years. So,
Right. And in terms of mental health in that regard, like, were you in communication with your friends, that type of thing? Was everyone looking after everyone, or was everyone more or less left to their own devices?
well, we play a lot of PlayStation or Xbox, and it was a way of communicating with and having fun with your friends, even though it wasn't as enjoyable as it would have been going outside, playing sports with your friends, and just going out, having fun, and seeing them at school. Just wasn't as enjoyable as real life.
Yeah. And Mary, do you find many people coming to you or were in contact with you during the lockdown finding the same thing, that their mental health was suffering because of the lockdown?
Yes, I would have people throughout the lockdown that would be calling, and what was happening was they were now in a situation where they could no longer be distracted. They had to sit with themselves more than they ever had before, and started realizing that some of the things that they were, when they were distracted, they didn't notice that they had anxiety. They didn't notice they had a fear of something, or they didn't notice something else. But now that when they had to really just be with themselves, all these things started coming in. And then since the lockdown has kind of loosened up a bit, I have people come in even more now. They're a little more, uh, since the vaccines and stuff, they're a little more willing to come out of the houses, but they're coming, same thing. They just spent too much time being distracted, and some not being able to be distracted. And some people, even, I think it was just they really couldn't cope with the isolation. They couldn't cope with being just with themselves or their family or whatever, and dealing with the same over and over again. Whereas before they could, go here, do this, get a coffee, put it on the back burner, and there was no putting anything on the back burner. So yeah, I got quite business kind of picked up that way, with people just realizing that they had problems that they didn't realize they had, or it's okay, it'll be grand, it'll work itself out, and it never did.
And what about yourself, Cormac, Jed? How did you find lockdown? Did you enjoy the isolation? Did it help you focus better? Or?
Yeah, I got, yeah, I actually, for the first few months, did a lot of walking, and I actually quite enjoyed it because the weather was pretty good. And I just considered myself lucky when I thought of the alternative. But as this year wore on, it became, just a bore. But, there's no better company than your own company. And I don't think you will ever have better company than that. So it's a chance to make the most of it. And that could be just reading or walking or running or something that you can do. Not kind of concentrating on what you can't do. So hope that cheers everyone up.
I was very fortunate in that on the first lockdown, my daughter and her family moved in, husband and 2 daughters. So we had their company for the first 3 months, and it worked very well. We got involved in online schooling, which had never, with one of them, with the eldest 4-year-old doing online schooling. It was that was fun. So I didn't experience a sort of isolation or my own company. I had a lot more than my own company to deal with. So it's difficult for me to appreciate really what a lot of other people, the loneliness that I think a lot of other people were going through.
It's certainly, I think it was a very strange time, and from dealing with clients over that time, I saw the whole range of, I saw those that absolutely loved the isolation because it helped them focus. But I've met others who felt the isolation was going to push them over the edge. So I got to experience it from both sides. And because we were working right the way through, for me as such, I didn't experience any type of isolation in that regard. So I'm probably one of the lucky ones. But I think very, very damaging, especially on younger people, and it's affected their futures, and it takes trying to rebuild that and say to them, it is safe to go out, it is safe to have your friends, to see your friends, once you're going to do it in a sensible and reasonable way.
Yeah, I think it's important to get things in perspective, and when it applies to young people, I think the fears are maybe being overstressed, understandably, because the government wants the numbers of people getting infected to be as low as possible. But in terms of the young people's fears for their own health, I think they need to be reassured that the chances of them contracting a severe form of COVID is very, very low. Probably no worse than a bad flu year. But obviously, it's a dangerous thing to say, because then you don't want them rushing out and having parties and saying, "Oh well, I'm okay. You don't have to worry about that."
Yeah.
But that's it. It's a very fine balancing line.
It is.
It is.
So,
I was going to say, I had an experience, and this would relate to the young people for being isolated from their companions and things like that at school. When I was a senior in high school, my family moved, and that took me from the school I'd been in for the last 4 or 5 years into another school. I was devastated. I wasn't going to get to graduate with my friends and all of that. So I can imagine that the young people are feeling very much a very similar thing, not being able to get to see their friends or socialize or things like that. So I can truly imagine how devastating and upsetting that can feel for them. And hope, like you say, that hopefully that trying to encourage the walking that fine line where, yes, you can see your friends, but that balance to not going overboard as well. So this creating more safe space for them.
I just see that we have one comment in from Johnny Gibson, say life will never be the same as before COVID again.
I hope that's not the case. I think that's a very doomsday sort of a look at the future. We've been through far worse. If you think of the Spanish flu in 1919, 1919, when it killed anything up to 100 million people. We then went into the Roaring *20s, and and the Charleston. People got over that. The proportion of the planet, that was 100 million when the population was less than 3 billion, so much more significant than now. So I ideally hope that we do go back to the old normal, not any new normal.
Again, for me personally, I think we don't want to go backwards. What we're going to get, why not look at it that we're not going back where we were, we're going to build something even better.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember the first time I came over here to Ireland. I remember it was when the hoof and mouth disease was running rampant, and I remember coming into the airport. They had the places where you did your feet and everything, and I was really quite impressed because in the States I'd never experienced anything like that at that level. And I thought, this is real. They're taking things very seriously, and they're taking, so it was a real a deeper impression that it made on me that the government was moving in and doing these kind of things for health and safety and things for the people. So that always stuck with me on my first trip over.
Well, one of the questions I always like to ask guests when they come on is about their favourite light bite lunch. So Cormac, we'll start with yourself. What would be for you your ideal light bite lunch?
My ideal light bite lunch would have to be my next lunch that day, because that's all that you can eat. And what's gone before is history. You could resurrect it and build it, but I just generally enjoy my food. I enjoy good food, and I find it's quite easy to obtain. There's lots of sources. So, I think, eat at home is a preference for really good food. Everywhere else.
What type of food would you like to have at home?
Well, look, I go for the standard stuff, greens and cereals, and reasonable amount of meat, but fish particularly. But for lunch, yeah, I would take salad, and there might be tuna or something in that, and loads of different fruits.
Right.
Do that for breakfast as well. Well, Ireland is a good place to be for light bite lunch, because particularly Galway is, but like in the last 2 years, I haven't ate out much in Galway.
Yeah. You'll always get good food down around Galway, all right. So, Jeff, for you, what would your light bite lunch be?
Well, if I want to treat myself, I keep a bag of frozen prawns in the freezer, and I put cream cheese on crackers, and I liberally sprinkle the prawn. That's my treat. I wouldn't have that too often. Normally, I'm a bit like Cormac. It's salads and egg salad or avocado salad, that type of thing. But if I'm treating myself, best light bite lunch would be prawns on cream cheese on crackers.
Very nice. And what about yourself, Mary?
Well, I do a lot of fasting. I've lost 6 stone with my fasting. And when I break the fast, I usually break it around lunchtime. So the first thing I usually eat, and now don't everybody get excited about this, is avocado with sauerkraut mixed together. Now, when I first heard this was the best way to break a fast, because you're breaking it with a bit of fat and the sauerkraut, which is a probiotic, I was like, I don't know, I like them, but I don't know if I like them together. But when I mixed it up and made it, it was the most delicious thing I had ever eaten. So if I'm coming off a fast, I love the avocado and sauerkraut. If I'm have not been fasting, then I'm a real salad person. Cormac, I love prawns. Oh gosh, I could eat prawns forever. And so like things like that. So yeah, those kind of things.
That's certainly a new one on me.
No, it was for me too. I was like,
And me.
Well, Mary, I actually have a question coming in for you there. Monique wants to know, how long do you fast for?
Okay, well, I have moved from doing intermittent fasting, which is just starting with lunch and doing that on a daily basis, and I end up fasting anywhere from 14 to 18 hours. Then I did that from July to the 1st of this year, last July to the 1st of this year, and then I got really intense with it. And I now do 36-hour fast, 60-hour fast. I did a 10-day fast at one point. I do all sorts of different kind of fasting. I fast for weight loss. I fast for autophagy, which is to heal my body. I fast for decreasing inflammation. And each one of those has a different parameter for how long you fast to achieve those goals. So so from the first of the year, I mix it all up and do all different kinds depending on what I need for my body. And it's been the most brilliant way to take a hold of my health and be a lot more healthy and have a much healthier diet.
Right. So just to clarify for people, during the fast, do you consume anything at all?
Depending on the kind of fast you're doing, yes. sometimes if I'm doing just the 13, 18-hour fast or whatever, I usually don't. But when I go on the longer fast, unless it's what they call a dry fast, I'll drink bulletproof coffee. I will drink water, tea, green tea, that sort of thing. But I don't eat anything. Then when there's a dry fast, which there's only recommended 24 to 72 hours to do, that's no eating, no drinking at all. And then I have nothing at all. I do those type of fasts maybe once a month. I will do a dry fast because that is a deep dive into your system and a very healing fast for the whole body.
Right. And we have another question for you from Monique there. Do you not get weak or dizzy during the long fast?
Absolutely not. The reason being, when you fast, what you do is you're shifting your burning from sugar into fat. And if you're, anybody like me, well, you've got plenty of that to go around. So when you're burning fat, you create ketones, which create energy, which is what you need. It's just not energy that you would get from burning sugar. This is the energy from ketones. So as long as I am in a fat burning mode and I am burning that fat, I feel amazing. In fact, when I broke my 10-day fast, I felt like I could go probably another week. I felt so good, so energized. So no, you don't get weak and dizzy at all. At least I didn't.
Right. That's certainly good to hear.
Yeah.
And
Apparently, that's almost like sleep. Your body repairs itself. Your
Absolutely.
gut lining repairs itself and your stomach repairs itself. And it needs that time to repair itself, just as your brain needs time to flush out when you're asleep. So there's a lot of this now with the microbiome. That's very interesting, and it's all quite reasonable, and it's usually called functional medicine.
certainly something I think we might have to cover early next year in the show as we for New Year's resolutions. So, Shane, for you, what would be your choice for Lite Bite lunch?
Well, my answer mightn't be as of variety, but I like it simple. So I probably have a cup of tea and a bagel with a bit of peanut butter on it. So that's really it.
Peanut butter bagel, you can't beat it.
You'll have to get married.
Right, well, we're just going to take a very quick ad break and then we'll be back with everyone.
In recent years, our Christmas glass baubles have been hugely popular. They can be personalised in any way you choose. Because these treasured keepsakes are each handmade, you can include any names, dates, or messages that are personal to you. These handmade delights are now available to order on our website, mayocalligraphy.ie, or by calling me, Maggie, at 086 1718 330. We are delighted to introduce our personalised festive stemware. These wine glasses are ideal gifts and can include names, dates and occasions, or you could choose your family surname and raise your decor to the next level. Produced here in County Mayo, there will be no issues with customs charges or supply chain problems. Order online at mayocalligraphy.ie or call 086 1718 330.
And of course, a huge thanks to Mayo Calligraphy for sponsoring the shows across this month. So I'm going to move on to the reason that I've brought Jed and Cormac on, and that is to talk about the ongoing saga of the Dublin Metro. Cormac pointed out to me this morning there was an article by Michael McDowell in the Irish Times, and I think his description of it is actually quite interesting. He describes it as a sick joke on the people of the greater Dublin metropolitan area. He says it consists of 160 pages of waffle, aspiration, euphemisms, evasions, bullet point wish lists, and vague blather, all based around conditionality, which doesn't actually sound all that good for the people of Dublin. As a lot of people know, the Dublin Metro plan has been shelved for another decade at least. They're now saying they're looking to look at it in 31. So I think maybe I'll ask Cormac just to take up the mantle and give us a little bit of the background because of his involvement in the Metro programme and what he's looking to achieve.
Yeah, I think, general public or everybody just knows the way it should be, and it's gone on for so long. Originally, that was my involvement in trying to get a metro for Dublin started in the early 1990s because I realized that it was never going to come. And look, it started really in 1922, which is 99 years and a bit away ago. And it's just dragged on forever. And, there's every excuse is put out. But cities all over the world have fantastic metros, cities much smaller than Dublin. And there's no reason why, with a bit of consultation with people like Jed and myself, that you wouldn't have your metro built. And I say this, from experience. I brought in the Japanese with a full offer to build a full metro system in 2000, and we presented to the Cabinet Committee on Infrastructure. We got that the metro would be advertised and all of that for the first time. And Michael McDougall would have been part of the government at that time. And we're just so sad that we can't do anything about it. And we are prepared to do something about it. And we can do it. We know how to do it. But we can't get our feet under the table because we're just not welcomed in. We're actually find it very difficult to have meaningful talks. We've never had a meaningful discussion with anybody in state bodies or agencies. It's always been about what they are doing. They just don't listen. If they listened, we'd have it built. And we have the templates where this has been done, how it's been done, and we're prepared to pursue that. We actually have very detailed plans available, and we can start immediately at it, and we can roll it over pretty quickly. And I say this from deep experience. I was involved in all of the M50 and the roads around Dublin, and I saw all the mechanisms, how that was built. I was also involved in the motorway rollout in Ireland to quite an extent that I got a phone call every week from somebody in government asking on progress amounts. And like, for instance, between 2000 and 2009, there was about 100 and there was about almost 900 kilometers of motorway rolled out in that period. Now, I'm kind of extending that a bit further in time, but the decision was taken in 2009. And for instance, Kinnegad to Galway, a length of 140 kilometers of motorway, was opened in 2009, except for the Galway bypass. The last 12 kilometers hasn't even got off planning permission yet. So the government took brave decisions before to do that, and that was a very brave decision to go for motorway. And they also took a very brave decision in the Docklands development back in 85, 86. Nobody thought that could be done, but I knew the people who thought it could be done and did it. And the country was absolutely broke at that time, worse than it is now, actually. And the government could give no money to that project. And yet, a year after starting, they got a payment of £68 million for the Docklands. Now, I don't know who else has debriefed the man who was CEO of that, and came up with a similar program for a metro, or who has talked with the man who did the Dublin Port Tunnel. He was the engineer in charge of that initially. He actually died early on in the scheme. I asked him, what would he have done different? I don't know people who ask these questions. They just tell you what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and why they're doing it is the best way. Like, just to end on this, is that somebody like Elon Musk cut the cost of going into space by 1,000 of the cost. 1,000. And you're talking billions going into space. A man in Madrid did a similar thing. And he wrote it all up. But it's the personality of that man that did it. It's half the equation, the personality of the man. The second is the techniques he used on it. And there's no reason. Everything that he did is actually 100% open to us to do here. So look, why wait is, a mantra.
Right. Where would you stand on their talk that by the time they get round to it in 2031, we're now looking at a costing of 10 billion? Would you believe that costing to be accurate? Would you believe it's?
I think if they do it the way they're outlining, it'll actually cost far more than that. And experience in London, the Jubilee line and Crossrail will hammer that down completely. If you do it the way they did it in Madrid, it'll actually come in at a fraction of that. But what I would say is that it actually costs not to do it, because it's what makes a society function. Like, it's the same as electricity in your house. You pay your bill, but it keeps you warm. It lets us have this meeting. It runs the machines. You pay the bills. So in a city, it's the same. The government get a wealth of tax in it. And I quantified all this to the government, saying that the incremental value of the GNP or GDP would be this amount. The amount you need, they call it a subsidy, but you wouldn't call your electricity bill a subsidy, would you? You call it, or a factory wouldn't call their electricity bill a subsidy. You call it enables a society to function properly. And you can't get a society to function properly with a city only of buses and trams. You need a backbone, you need a beast, and you need to feed the beast, and the beast feeds the other units of transport. Like, do we have a transportation system in Dublin, public transport? By any measure of a yardstick, I would say no, because so few people actually use public transport. Small village towns all over Switzerland would use, they'd have 4 times the number of people using public transport as we do in Dublin. And people will give you all kinds of excuses. Oh, but this, they have train lines and that. We have actually better infrastructure than they started with. Much better. Dublin is very well laid out to do it. And that's why I came up with the plan. And I'm saying this from really deep experience, because I did plan a lot of bypasses that have been built. And I had the minister criticizing me in days that he opened bypasses that I actually chose the alignment of, announcing them. I chose the routes. I know about that type of thing. And I know about public procurement very, very well. So we've been with them board Planola, but we can't get beyond it because they have asked us to talk to the Dublin local authorities, and we want to talk to them. We've got motions from the City Council and Fingal County Councils saying that this should happen, but where are we going? You can look on our Twitter account, Metro for Dublin. Go back through that, and you'll see the depth and breadth that we have. Or go onto YouTube and type in Jed Van der Poel, and you'll see an overall summary of the Metro. Now we've moved on.
I think that's actually a good time to bring Jed in and give us a little bit of his interpretation on things.
Well, just going on the economic side of things, I think it's worth noting that when Madrid made its extension, which is what Cormac was referring to, they built 120 kilometers of metro, 100 kilometers that was underground, and they managed to do that in 8 years. Now, I was just looking at a quote from the deputy chief executive of the NTA, National Transport Authority, in this morning's Irish Times, and Hugh Cregan said, "I know people would like things to happen faster, but big transport projects don't get done anywhere in the world fast unless you're in a dictatorship, which thankfully we're not." Well, I would hope that we'd all agree that in in 2000 that Spain was not a dictatorship, and they achieved this metro, 120 kilometers of metro in just 8 years, and it transformed Madrid from I think something like 17th wealthiest city in Europe to the third wealthiest now. It's the third wealthiest behind London and Paris. And what's significant about London and Paris is that they have the first and second best public transport systems in Europe. They vie with each other for who has the best transport system. And of course, it's based on underground. It's based on metro. And if we are going to have that boost that we need post-COVID, post-Brexit, then the way to do that is with a metro, with a fully functioning transformational, not an incremental metro, which is what is being suggested by the government, which is simply from Dublin Airport or just north of Dublin Airport to the city centre. That's just another bit of increments, adding something on to an already dysfunctional road and bus network that already exists.
Could I just mention one point on the incremental part? This is actually quite important. Building lines incremental can do more damage than good, because the areas that are wealthy just do better, and it locks everybody else out. And to get onto the single line, you need a line. You need to be able to transport every part of the city. It's geography that matters. People have to have destinations. They have to be able to get on and off of metros and Lewises and buses and whatever other form of transport, walking and cycling. That's what you need. So it's about geography. It's about getting transport everywhere. Otherwise, if you build a metro to Swords, that's the best advertisement for people who already live in Swords to buy a house out in Navan. Why? Because they won't be able to afford it in Swords, because that's the luxury area. So if you want to build to Walkinstown, you need to build everywhere at the one time. And what's more, we say that it's self-financing. We went through the economics of this. I'm not talking about the Colin McCarthy economics. I'm talking about the Bent Fluvier economics, who's the master of massive infrastructural projects in the world. And he recently published a paper with the Harvard Business Journal, which is a very, very prestigious article outlining Mellis's work, how he did it. The solution is usually staring you in the face.
Mellis is the engineer in Madrid that Cormac was talking about. Sorry.
So, Cormac, what people watching this now, how can they help support your project and start putting pressure on? We did invite the Minister to join us today, but unfortunately he wasn't available due to prior commitments.
It's actually, if you want to get a metro built ASAP, we have got to get our feet under the table, and we will make it happen very quickly, because we have the timeline and the knowledge to do it. And it will be led by the private sector, but that's all rail operators will have full access to the railway system. And hopefully it'll be a partnership with the government agencies. So what can they do? Well, it's really a political decision, and the political decision has to be that the minister has to say to the cabinet that he wants to let us talk with the National Transport Authority. He has to say that to them, to the cabinet. We don't want the support for it. We just want him to open up the protocol that we need to go through for this type of thing. And we can do the whole lot through transparency and European procurement, for contracts, that method. So it will be fully laid out like that. And it's an iterative process. It's all built in. And can I say is that we have submitted a huge amount of information to Onboard Planola, preliminary designs and break down exactly how we'll do it in the strategic infrastructure, under the strategic infrastructure act. That has been sitting on their desks for a number of years because they have asked us to talk with local authorities and other agencies. But the NTA say they've told us they're not interested. They've blocked us at every stage. But we would love to talk with them under the table. And we need to talk with you know, with a view to being fairly pragmatic about what can be done. We can't be using the old methods of doing it. I mean that by we can you know, we can bring together the team we need to implement this. Like in Madrid, they probably spent, you know, if they spent 30 million on engineering designs, I'm talking about the preliminary engineering design, not the other work that goes in by the local state agencies and that, for their whole 120 kilometers of metro.
Yeah.
And we're talking over 300 million for something that's not built. And that 30 million included all the supervision and quality control of the delivery up to the commissioning.
Well, certainly, it sounds like you've got the makings of a very worthwhile project. So basically what we need is we need people to hound your local TDs to get onto the minister and say, look, why can't these people talk? If after the talking you can come back and say, look, this is why your plan won't work, A, B, C, D, then we can go back and review it. But at least let's get the conversation started. Like, to my mind, it makes sense. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but if there's an option out there that's more affordable, that has a proven track record, that operates with transparency, what is there not to look at?
Well, yeah, like we've had, you know, the president of the Metro Madrid came over, gave his time to come to Dublin on three occasions, and he came to meet us again another time, and we simply said to them, he says, you know, we want the minister. There was a minister for justice in Madrid that oversaw the metro. You know, was the person who made it happen. Melis was the technical engineer who knew how to do it. We will just go over to Madrid with us. We'll walk the lines. We go through we'll go through what you need to do and timeline and how to do this. Nothing that happened here hasn't happened in Madrid. They have a huge bureaucracy. They had people that didn't believe in it, that it couldn't be done. They had advice of all the consultants, you know, and all the big reports that it couldn't be done. And even Melis had to go and you know, saying we can do it. And he led his scheme based on what he says was on safety, and he produced all his works without any major accident because he was very, very sure in everything he did, and he did them extremely fast. He set world records in tunnel boring machine size and time of doing it. And in breaking up his contract, he, like some of the lines in 18 months, he had them built, you know, say 6 kilometers, built, opened, next bit, happening at the same time, opening next 6 kilometers a couple of months later. And he, you know, as Jed said earlier, it's not that he did, you know, 120 kilometers. He did something 120 different contracts, all repeating the same kind of performances. And there's a very good summary in that Harvard review that Ben Bluvier wrote, you know, of his achievements.
Yeah, but what was interesting in that Harvard review piece was what Elon Musk has done with his Gigafactory. When completed, the Gigafactory, which builds batteries, It will be the largest. It would be the largest building in the world by surface area, and he broke up that project into 21 different units. So he's built 13 units so far. He's got another 8 to go. But on completion of when he completed each unit, that then began producing batteries. So he didn't wait. He's not waiting till the whole thing's done. He gets each unit, and it's producing and it's generating revenue for him. And what's interesting is that they've learned so much from each time they built a unit that by the time they built the 13th, completed the 13th, they'd actually already hit the target for the total that they were expecting to produce on an annual basis for 21 units. So that was the learning curve that they managed to achieve. Melis, the engineer in Madrid, did something similar with each kilometre of metro, each 6-kilometre section he completed, and they started generating revenue, transferring people. And that's what we need to do in Dublin. Not build a single incremental line. We need to learn from building 94 kilometres, which is what we're intending to do. And we will learn as we go along. And it will take about 6 years. And this is the type of thing that Dublin Transport Authority, to give it an overall name, doesn't believe is possible. But yet we would love to take them over to Madrid to show how it can be done.
Okay, now playing devil's advocate on this, in terms of the environment, what sort of environmental impact would either the construction or the actual operation have?
Well, there's two levels on that. One is, the disturbance that it caused to the city while you're building it. And the second is, well, what's the carbon footprint of everything you do? Generally, if you put up a windmill, the carbon footprint is very high, but the payback in terms of carbon footprint is immense. So the payback in the footprint would be that if you have an efficient system that you build, and this is where we would differ from the Lewis, is that if you build a proper metro, your carbon footprint can be a lot less because there's a lot of regenerative power, and you consume less power for the number of people you do. On the building environmental part of it, we can slip it in without the people of Dublin knowing about it. It is possible to do it, most of it. We can do very tight stations by using, special designs that we've developed, where we have to build from the surface. But and we've chosen the places where we come in and come out, very, very carefully, because that's one area I have a huge experience of with roads, being involved in a lot of very contentious roads around Dublin. And I sorted out a lot of problems there that people just don't know about. But so we can fit it in from the environment of the city. We won't cause disruption. Melis also did an upgrade of the N30 road to an M30 motorway in Madrid, and he built 66 kilometers of tunnel for that. And he kept that road open the whole time. It was awkward for people, but the ring road in Madrid is the N30, and he built it to an M30, and he did the most fantastic work putting the roads underground to the center of Madrid. And that's another reason why Madrid went to number 3. And economically, it from a fraction of Barcelona to many more times the GNP of Barcelona is a good example of that. So all this, we have the information, we've submitted to An Planola, we've presented to the City Council years ago. We presented to consultants who told us it was the best stuff they ever saw, but yet the report that was produced at the end of the day never mentioned what we submitted to them. mentioned other stuff.
Right.
So
Well,
where do we go? We need to get, it needs to be a political decision. It's a policy decision. The minister is the person for policy. When you do a PPP, he has to take it to the cabinet so that we can get our feet under the table. They can ask us any questions they want, and we'll answer them, and we're confident we can deliver it. We're sure we can deliver it.
But I think this is one we're going to have to keep watching and see how it develops, and we'll certainly come back to it in the new year. Again, if the minister is watching and would like to arrange it, sit down and have a chat informally or formally to look at the plans, I'm sure both Cormac and Jed would be happy to make themselves available. So on the subject of talking about coming back to this next year, what are your plans for 2022? No one wants to jump at that.
I want to build a metro. That's what I want to. I want to start the metro in 2022.
And Cormac is probably there alongside you on that one.
I think so.
Yes, yeah. And do a lot more.
Any big plans for next year, Cormac?
Besides the metro and that,
Besides the metro.
yeah. Well, I have a daughter getting married in a fairly soon, so that's one plan over. Well, it's not my plan, but yeah. Like I just think there's just a brilliant opportunity now with to do things that we again, but there's also just the wealth of knowledge is increasing so much, and we can learn anything we need to know about so easily from proper sources. I mean, there's all the rogue sources and trolling media and all of that type of stuff, but there are very good sources on YouTube and Facebook, etc. It just joins people together, and that's what it's about. It's about joining communities. So what I want to do next year is travel a bit, walk a bit. I'm talking about long distance walking. Eat good lunch bites.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Oisin? What are your plans for 2022?
Well, I'd like to go abroad now. I haven't been abroad in 2 years, so that's probably all I'm planning for next year.
The great school escape.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Mary?
Well, the first thing in 2022 is get my hip replaced because it's time. And once I've done that, then I can go home, see my family. I haven't been in the States since 2015. And I'm just ready to get that side of my life back together. Business wise, I would like to see myself and again, my hip being repaired does a lot for this. Go out, do more tours and things like that, chats, talks, and just get back on the road and running.
Jed, if I can ask you, if somebody came to you and said, listen, I have a great idea for a business, I'm going to start it up, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think they have to understand that if it's going to succeed, it's all encompassing. It's apart from the time that you're sleeping, then you're going to be working on that. You're going to be working on that business. So the commitment to what you want to do, you have to make sure that you have the energy for that project. You can have a bright idea, but unless it energizes you, it's not going to be able to give you what you need to get you through the day. I've started businesses, and you work from as soon as you get up in the morning till when you go to bed at night, and you can do that because the business that you're involved in gives you energy. So just be sure. I can't remember who it was who said, get somebody to pay you to do your hobby, and you never have to work a day in your life. And so it's a bit like that. Make whatever it is that your business is, hopefully it's a hobby of yours, and then you have the energy.
And what about yourself, Cormac? What advice would you have?
Well, my father was an entrepreneur and it runs in the family. He was also a builder, and he mentioned, and I was dragged around building sites from my earliest memories all over Ireland. So a lot of it kind of sinks into you through osmosis. So, I mean, the advice is there's a ton of wealth on YouTube, and there's all different genres of it, and you need to kind of, gorge on one, then you won't want to do that again for a while. Go somewhere else and more and more and more. And there's one thing they all say is that there's a long lead-in time in businesses. You have to learn failure is the greatest recipe for success. It's the greatest lesson. The harder, childhoods most of the really successful people had, to say while it broke them initially, it was the best thing that ever happened to them. So there's a lot of that. So it makes you, watching these people, just want to get out there and do it. And doing it is in doing it. It's not by talking about it. It's about putting something out there. Doesn't matter what it is. You'll find what the market is as soon as you put it out there. So my advice would be that, and that's what we realize, and that's why we say we've got a great project, but by the time we build it, it'll be quite different, but it'll even be far greater.
It's like the other one alongside when you're doing about working at your hobby is, remember, all no means is next opportunity.
Yeah, and you have to make it.
Absolutely. And so what about yourself, Mary? What advice would you give?
Well, the first thing I'd say is enthusiasm is amazing and you need that. But before you get that and get your business off the ground, don't forget that you can get help, get a mentor, advice. Be sure that you check everything, that what you need to do, how you need to do it. That was one of the things where I messed up. I didn't get mentors until I was further along. But you need a mentor. You need somebody that can help you, guide you, help you with, make sure you don't, I mean, you're still going to make mistakes, but hopefully with a mentor, you're not making such big mistakes. But that would be my biggest and best advice, is be sure you get a mentor.
Right, thank you very much. So in one sentence, Cormac, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about your Metro project?
Well, they could, DM me on Twitter or something like that, or just write to cormacrabbit@gmail.com. You have my name there on the screen, Rabbit with 2 T's and no E. Just that.
Grand. And Jed, if anyone wants to get in touch with you afterwards to find out more?
Same jedvanderpaul@gmail.com. I keep it nice and simple.
That's great. I will put the emails up after the show. And Mary, if anyone wants to get in touch with you?
Yes, you can go to my website, vibrationalinstitute.com, or go ahead and email me at vibrationalinstitute@gmail.com.
That's great. Well, listen, thank you all very much for joining us today. We're just about out of time. We have, just to say to everyone, we have a lovely show coming up in 2 weeks' time, when we're going to be talking all about your four-legged friends for Christmas. We're going to be joined by representatives of Dogs Trust. We're going to have dog trainers and a range of other different guests. We might even have a couple of four-legged friends as guests as well. So we look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks' time at 12:45. And until then, have a very good afternoon.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Rory. Lovely.